All right. Hey, good morning, everybody. Shalom, shalom. It is Thursday morning, January the 23rd, 2025, and hope you're having a beautiful morning so far. Today, we are continuing now in the Torah portion of this week, Va'era, and we will be looking today at Exodus, from about Exodus 6:14 through Exodus 7:7. And the title of today's Daily Manna is The Path of Pain. The path of pain, and we're going to be looking at that really this today, and when we look at a little bit further about into the rest of this Torah portion. Just want to remind everyone, please just take a moment to hit like and subscribe and share, and thank you for your faithfulness in giving and supporting the ministry. But when you just take that moment to share that on your social media, that really helps make a big difference. And so please do that. And if you haven't downloaded our app, you can go to the App Store and type in Shalom AZ and download our app. All right, well, let's begin. We're going to be looking at Exodus 6:14 through 7:7. The Lord had told Moses, when we looked last in Exodus 6 verses 6 through 8, saying, I'm revealing myself now. You're going to experience me as Adonai. And of course, he gives the name Yod He Vav He. Often we'll say Hashem, even just the name. Hashem means the name, and so he gives his name. And he says, this is how I'm going to reveal myself to you. I'm going to bring you, and of course it's this passage we're very familiar with because of Passover. I'm going to bring you out from under the Egyptians. I'll deliver you from their bondage. I'll redeem you with an outstretched arm. I'm going to take you to myself as a people, and I will be your God. There's this relational aspect. And then I'm going to bring you into the land that I swore that I would to your forefathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that I would give to their descendants, which is you. That's who I am. That's who I am. The Lord says, I'm going to do what I said I would do. And so he says, Moses, bring this message to the people. Now, when he brought it at this point, because now the very first attempt to tell Pharaoh, let my people go, had resulted in a worsening of their conditions. It says they didn't listen to him. They didn't shema. They wouldn't respond to him really or heed what he was saying. It says because of their broken spirit. It says there's the shortness of their spirit or of their breath, and because of their cruel bondage. Now that doesn't stop the Lord. He tells Moses, just go and do what I said. Go and tell Pharaoh now. And Moses, again, as he had before, argues and says, look, if Israel didn't listen, they're not listening. They're not hearing me. Pharaoh's not going to listen. And Pharaoh, and Moses says again, look, I'm telling you, I'm not good at this. I have uncircumcised lips. And the Lord says, go, right? And that was sort of where it ended. And the passage now kind of moves us into the biblical equivalent of a commercial break, bum, 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 the suspense. What's going to happen now? And it's a genealogy break. The narrative pauses for a moment to give us a little bit more background into these key figures that we've met, Aaron and Moses. So now the rest of chapter 6 continues with what begins as a genealogy of the sons of Israel. And you think, because it's going to begin with Reuben, you think, it's going to take us now through a lengthy genealogy through the 12 sons, but it doesn't. It starts with Reuben. And really the genealogy is going to go, no, that's not where we're focused. And it'll keep until it's just going to key in on who we need to be focused on. So it doesn't list all 12. And as usual, the genealogy only mentions the sons. The only women mentioned in this genealogy are Jochebed, which is the mother of Moses and Aaron. And then Aaron's wife, Elisheva, who is the mother of Eleazar, the grandmother of Pinchas or Phineas. So the genealogy, again, it doesn't begin with the firstborn. It begins with Reuben and his sons. So when they first came into Egypt, it begins with Reuben and his sons. But it doesn't take us beyond that first generation because they're not really the focus here. So then it lists the second son, Simeon, and his sons. But it, again, no further, same thing. It just just him and then his sons. It doesn't take us to another generation. Then we get to Levi, right? And so now this is where it keys in on. We do get the generations proceeding from Levi. So now we're given information about Levi that we weren't given about Reuben, about Simeon, because they're really not the focus of this. We're told that Levi died at the age of 137. And his sons, he had three sons, Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. And his second son, Kohath, we then follow his second son, right? So we don't follow the first son. We don't follow the third son. We follow the second one because that's the line we're looking at. The second son, Kohath, had sons Amram, Itzhar, Hebron, and Uziel, right? So Kohath lived 133 years. Again, we don't get Gershon's age because that's not the line we're following. So we go from Levi to Kohath, and then we go from Kohath to his firstborn son Amram, and Amram lived 137 years, and Amram now is Levi's grandson, and Amram married Yocheved, right? And her name Yocheved means the glory of Adonai, and she bore him the sons Aaron and Moses. So they are the great-grandsons of Levi. Okay. Now from here, actually, it doesn't go on to give us Moses' genealogy, actually. It gives us Aaron's because he becomes the high priest. So it gives us Aaron, and then it tells us, so Aaron married Elisheva, and they had four sons. The first two sons were Nadab and Avihu. Now, Nadab and Avihu, we later find out, are struck by the Lord for offering strange fire, so they don't continue to live. So the third son is Eleazar. He will become the high priest after Aaron, and then Ithamar. And then we're told that Eleazar marries, and his wife bore him Pinchas, who we later find out in Deuteronomy, and who he was given a covenant of peace because of what he did during the plague that was on Israel in the desert. Anyway. So we come to the end. It goes through all of that. Exodus 6:25 says, these are the heads of the ancestral houses of the Levites according to their families. So the genealogy stops there. It doesn't continue because it got us to where we were going. It's telling us, hey, Moses and Aaron are part of the promise, and there was a plan, and they are of the tribe of Levi. There's a priestly line here where as priests of the Lord in this priestly line, that they will mediate between God and his people. And so it doesn't take us to the next son. It doesn't take us to Judah even here, right? Because that's not the focus here. The point here in this genealogy was to get us to Aaron and Moses. So when we come back in verse 26 from our genealogy commercial break, it continues. It picks that. It restates. It gives us a little bit of a back from commercial recap here to catch us back up to where we were when we left off just before the genealogy commercial. Verse 26. These are the same Aaron and Moses, to whom Adonai said, bring the children of Israel out from the land of Egypt according to their divisions. Verse 27. These are the ones that spoke to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to bring Bnei Israel out from Egypt. These are that same Moses and Aaron. Verse 28. So it happened on the day when Moses spoke to Moses, when Adonai spoke to Moses in the land of Egypt, that Adonai said to Moses, I am Adonai, tell Pharaoh, king of Egypt, everything that I tell you. But Moses said to Adonai, I am of uncircumcised lips, so how would Pharaoh listen to me, right? So it recaps that. Okay, we're back there, which brings us to chapter 7. So Adonai said to Moses, he says, look, see, I have set you as God to Pharaoh, and Aaron, your brother, will be your prophet. So that can be a weird verse right out of the gate, right? I have set you as God to Pharaoh. What the Lord is doing here, he simply, he says, I will give you, or I have given you to Pharaoh as like you're going on my behalf. He's describing the mechanics of how this is going to work, right? Reiterating what he had said to Moses earlier. He says, you're not going to be the one that has to speak these words directly to Pharaoh. I'll give you my words, and you give them to Aaron, and he will be like your prophet, your mouthpiece. So that's what he's describing here. He says, I've set you, it's like your God to Pharaoh, and Aaron, your brother, will be the prophet, your prophet. So again, it's just the Lord's way of making sure that he understands the mechanics of how this is going to work. Verse 2, you are to speak all that I command you, and Aaron, your brother, is to speak to Pharaoh, so that he will let Bnei Israel go out of his land. Verse 3, yet I will harden Pharaoh's heart and multiply my signs and wonders in the land of Egypt. So we're going to start here. We're going to focus in on what this is, this hardening of Pharaoh's heart. And we're not going all the way through. Obviously, when you go through all the plagues, I mean, honestly, the question of the hardening of Pharaoh's heart takes us all the way into next week's Torah portion. But so today we're just going to key in on this at the very beginning, and then we'll have to continue. But throughout the entirety of this passage, in which this idea is reiterated, there are three different words, three different Hebrew words, which are translated in English, all of them being translated as to harden his heart. But the three different words. And the word used here in verse 3 is the word kasha. Kasha simply means it can mean to be severe, to treat harshly, cruel, to be cruel even. Kasha means to be severe, to be harsh. And then, so that's the verse, that's the word that's used here in chapter 7, verse 3. And we're going to look at it again in a minute. Later, the word that, and this is a familiar word if you've been around Hebrew much at all, multiple times, several times, the word that is used to speak of Pharaoh's hardened heart is the word chazak. Chazak. So sometimes, often this can be a good word where, Joshua is told to be strong and courageous. Chazak, be strong, right? It can be a positive word. But it can be to make strong or to be stubborn is how it can be understood here. So, for example, in Exodus 7:13, it says, yet Pharaoh's heart was chazak, and it became stronger, right? He kind of doubled down is the idea. And so it can be often interpreted as stubborn, became stubborn. Yet Pharaoh's heart became stubborn. So the first word was kasha. It's meaning to be severe, to be hard and severe. The second word, chazak, it's to make strong or to be stubborn. The third word that's used, and these kind of move throughout, is also a very familiar word and is a little bit of a surprising word. It's the word. So the word is keved or kavod, right? So this is a word that usually, when you read the word kavod in Hebrew, it means to glorify. It means glory, because it literally speaks to a weightiness, to a heaviness. And so the glory of the Lord brings there's a weight to him, a heavy, a significance to him. But in this case, it will speak of Pharaoh's heart, and it uses this word kavod or keved. Now, just a real quick note. So, for example, Exodus 8:11. Exodus, when you get to the end of chapter 7 into chapter 8, the Hebrew Bible and the Jewish Bible and traditional Christian Bibles kind of go with a different verse order, so that there's like a 4-verse differential in terms of when they decided to start. So the English Bible starts chapter 8 4 verses earlier, using verses that in the Jewish Bible are left as chapter 7. All that to say, in the TLV, which is after the Jewish Bible, it's Exodus 8:11. But if you're in like the NIV or the NASV, it's going to be Exodus 8:15. Same verses all the way through. It's just a different choosing of when to do the chapter break. Okay. So Exodus 8:11 says, "But when Pharaoh saw there was relief," right? So first he was like, "All right, I'll let you go." But then when he saw that there was relief, when he saw that there was breathing room, it says he hardened his heart. And it uses this word, kaved, right? He waited, or he was heavy in his heart in his response, or it can be that he glorified his heart. I'm fine. Right? So you see these three different words that are used, and so if you go back, and I think I put them on the screen for chazak. Chazak is used in Exodus 7:13, Exodus 7:22, Exodus 8:15, which in the NASV would be Exodus 8:19, Exodus 9:17, 10:20, 10:27, 14:4, 14:8, 14:17, and 18. Kavod is used for the word hardened here in Exodus 8:11, Exodus 8:28, 9:7, 9:35, and 14:18. And in a couple of places where they're kind of back to back, like in Exodus 9:34 and 35, if you're looking, it uses kavod and chazak. So we'll look at those. Today I just want to kind of focus in on this first word for a second. And this first word, come back to it in Exodus 7:3, is kasha. Because I do believe there is something that you see with these differing words. They're not merely synonyms, which should all be translated hardened. I realize that's what obviously people smarter than me have done, but I don't think that they were. I think the words themselves are distinguishable enough that they do convey something different than simply this picture of "I will harden his heart," or "he hardened his heart." You have a picture of, where there are moments where what's happening is he is glorifying his heart, and he will, and anyway, well, I don't want to get ahead of myself, and but here, look again at Exodus 7:3. He says, "Yet I will kasha, I will harden Pharaoh's heart and multiply my signs and wonders in the land of Egypt." The word kasha is only used regarding Pharaoh's hardening of heart here in this verse. This is the only verse where it's done this way. Now, kasha is also used in regard to Pharaoh and his heart, really, in the Passover narrative in chapter 13. So, when we're having Passover, we will spend a lot of time in chapters 12 and 13, and we're recalling that this is where that speech that Moses is giving to the people on the night of the Passover. And he says in verse 14, look at Exodus 13:14. It says, "So when your son asks you in times to come, what is this? Say to him, by a strong hand Adonai brought us out from Egypt, the house of bondage." Verse 15, "And when Pharaoh refused to let us go, Adonai slew all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both men and animals." This goes on. But that word refused is the word kasha. And it literally says this. In verse 15 says, "V'yehi ki hikasha," which means And it was because of the severity of Pharaoh in letting us go, the Lord, in not letting us go, Adonai slew all the firstborn in the land of Egypt because of the cruelty, because of the severity of Pharaoh. So here it's translated, "and when Pharaoh refused," but the literal translation would be, because of the cruelty, the severity of Pharaoh to let us go, Adonai slew all the firstborn in the land of Egypt. So that's literally what it's saying. Because he refused to send us, it was because of his cruelty, his severity in refusing to send us. Now, I hope you're following with me here. This is a word, kasha, which has also been used twice in this Exodus narrative leading up to this part. But the other two times that it was used, it didn't have anything to do with the hardness of Pharaoh's heart. But I think it gives us insight as to what's being stated here in chapter 7, verse 3. Exodus 1:13 and 14. Exodus 1:13. They worked them harshly. The Egyptians worked them harshly and made their lives bitter with kasha labor, with hard labor, with severe labor, with mortar and brick, doing all sorts of work in the fields. In all their labors, they worked them with cruelty. So we saw it here. The Pharaoh is afraid of this multiplying people. They decided to enslave them, to work them harshly, and they made their lives bitter with kasha. Right? So they made their lives bitter. Kasha is what Pharaoh was doing. He was being severe. He was being harsh, hard, as it were, in the labor that he was assigning to the people. So that's the first time we see this word kasha, which again translated as hardened in chapter 7, verse 3. We also read this word in chapter 6, right after Moses had brought basically that gospel of chapter 6, verses 6 through 8. I'm going to bring you out, I'll bring you to myself, and I'll bring you into a land, right? And then what's the following verse? We know this verse well. It says, verse 9 says, Moses spoke this way to the children of Israel, but they did not listen to him. They did not shema because of their broken spirit and their kasha bondage, because of the hardness, the severity, the cruelty of their bondage. So, Pharaoh has been kasha, severe. He has operated with kasha, with cruelty, with harshness towards God's people. And that kasha, that harshness, affected them in such a way that it made it difficult for them to even believe the words. It was crushing that made it difficult for them to believe the words Moses was saying to them. So now what the Lord is saying here in Exodus 7:3 is using that same word, right? He's saying, now I will be, verse 3, yet I will kasha Pharaoh's heart. I'm going to be severe now to Pharaoh's heart, multiplying my signs and wonders in the land of Egypt. The severity is crushing. It's a severity that Pharaoh has meted out, right? He has meted all of this out on the Lord's firstborn, Israel, right? So the Lord has graciously come. He sent Moses and Aaron to the Pharaoh with an invitation. Release my firstborn. Release my son. You're being crushing to them. You've used kasha. You've been severe toward them. Now release them. And he did that, we talked about earlier in the week, with a sense of empathy, right? But also with a sense of warning. Exodus 4:22 and 23 again, he says, you are to say to Pharaoh, this is what Adonai says, Israel is my son, my firstborn. So I have said to you, let my son go, that he may worship me, that he may serve me. But you've refused to let him go. Look at me, he says. Behold, I myself now, Anoki, will slay your son, your firstborn. So this is the message the Lord has sent to him. And again, the Lord knows Pharaoh well. He knows what's in Pharaoh's heart. Pharaoh is super predictable. Before that, he had said this to Moses. Verse 19, Exodus 3:19, he says, and as for me, I know, nevertheless, I know that the king of Egypt will not let you go, except by a mighty hand. I know they won't let you go, except I'm going to have to use strength. And someone could say, well, then, if he's going to say no anyway, why are you doing this? Because I want him to let my people go. But he's just going to say no, but I'm still going to give him an opportunity. Even if I know he's going to say no, I still give him the invitation. I'm not making him say no. I just know he's going to say no. The only thing that's going to move him is strength. So, verse 20, so I will stretch out my hand, and I will strike Egypt with all my wonders that I will do in the midst of it. After that, he will let you go. Right? So follow me here. Are there people that you know so well that you could say to someone, hey, watch this. Watch when I do this. Watch how they'll respond to this. And time after time, you know. And you'd be right because you know them so well. And you know what happens when you push their buttons. They're super predictable. So if you do something that will, quote unquote, make that person angry, did you make them angry? Or did they respond angrily? Did you provoke them to anger? Yes. Did they choose to respond angrily? Yes. Right. It's always interesting to me, like, did they have a choice in how they responded? Were they forced to respond angrily? Sure, you pushed the buttons, you incited them. They're that predictable, you know what's in them. It's always interesting how I'll be watching a TV show or a movie or something, and you'll hear this line in television all the time when they'll say, I had to do it. He gave me no choice. I had no choice. And it's like, you had a choice, you just didn't like your options. Well, Pharaoh here had a choice. Now, both choices were going to be painful. Choice A, lose all your slave labor that's building your pyramids. Let my people go. That's A. I know you don't like that one. But B is, if you don't, you're going to lose a whole lot more than your slaves. So you can lose your slaves, and let my people go, and everything else will stay the same. Or you're also going to lose your slaves and your firstborn and a whole lot more. A or B? Which is it going to be? There is no C. There is none of the above option here. So your best option is let my people go. I'm inviting you to let my people go. Don't choose B because this is much more severe. Right? The Lord knows, Pharaoh. If you demand something, and if you send your stuttering servant who he doesn't respect, to a narcissistic egomaniac, and you go to this narcissistic egomaniac who thinks he's a god, and you give him a warning of, you do what I say or there will be consequences. I mean, that's pushing a button. You think he's going to respond with submission? Right? Is he going to go, oh, okay. He's going to do exactly what he did. I don't know who this Adonai is. No, and he made it worse. The Lord knows that. The Lord's not making him respond that way, but he sure is pushing his buttons. He knows what's in Pharaoh. He knows when he squeezes this, what's going to come out is just rebellion against what God has instructed. And so when the Lord presses through with his plan and Pharaoh responds predictably, did the Lord cause Pharaoh to respond that way, or did Pharaoh choose to respond that way? On one level, I would say the answer is yes. The Lord knew what buttons to push, but it doesn't change the reality that Pharaoh had an opportunity to not choose the way of pain. Advertisers find a way. Have you ever noticed you'll be on your phone or something, and you'll have said something, and it's heard something, and now your phone is selling you something that it knows you want? And sometimes we're so predictable. People are so predictable that these people can study our psychology so much that there are scientists that say we don't have free will because we can be so easily controlled psychologically. But we're not being controlled. It's just that we're being revealed. We're being exposed, but we indeed are choosing. And so the Lord says, Pharaoh, you have the opportunity to choose the way of lesser pain. just let my people go. But the Lord knows, I fully understand who Pharaoh is, and the only thing he will respond to is a strong hand, is severity. So, just because I know that I know he's not going to respond to the invitation, it doesn't mean I'm going to bypass the invitation. Right? I know I'm going to say, let my people go, and I know he's going to say no, and 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 he's going to say no 10 times. And he'll say, okay, no. Okay, no. But I'm not going to go, since I already know that's going to happen, I'm just going to jump ahead and take away his firstborn. This is on him. I know he'll reject the invitation, but I'll still give it sincerely. He says so in verse 3, yet I will be severe toward Pharaoh's heart. How am I going to do that? I'm going to multiply my signs and wonders in the land of Egypt. In Psalm 9, let me see here, and it's not on the screen here. In Psalm 9, verses, let me see here. Oh, it talks about how, and let me back up. I'm sorry. Or maybe it's Psalm 10. Anyway, well, it talks about how the wicked one falls into the pit that he dug, right? And in the same, I thought it was in Psalm 9. Am I in the wrong? Oh yeah, here we go. Psalm 9, 16 and 17 says, the nations sank into the pit they made. The net they hid caught their own foot. Verse 17 then says, Adonai is known for doing justice, for executing judgment. The wicked one is trapped in the work of his own hands. So that verse 17, it describes how one of the ways that the Lord does justice or executes judgment is revealed in what's baked into the consequence, where the wicked one is trapped in the work of his own hands. It's still the Lord's judgment, but the wicked one is trapped in the work of his own hands. So it's doesn't make that person not responsible, but this still is, that consequence still is the judgment of the Lord. And so we're gonna pause here in just a moment. Let me just read these few verses that are left. So it says, yet I will be, verse 3, I will be severe, harden Pharaoh's heart, and multiply my signs and wonders in the land of Egypt. But Pharaoh will not listen to you, so I will lay my hand upon Egypt and bring forth my armies, bring forth my people, the children of Israel, out of the land of Egypt by great judgments. The Egyptians will know that I am Adonai when I stretch out my hand against Egypt and bring out the children of Israel from among them. So Moses and Aaron did as Adonai commanded them. Moses was 80 years old and Aaron 83 years old when they spoke to Pharaoh. So this is going to be a power struggle. I mean, a pretty one-sided one. And that's the way the Lord will win every power struggle. And he reveals, sometimes he will allow severity to reveal what's in our heart. And the question is, will we double down? Will we, when things get severe, will we harden? Will we glorify ourselves? Will we become stubborn, or will we submit? Humble yourself in the sight of the Lord, and he will lift you up. And so we'll look a little more closely at the power struggle a little bit later as we go into the next Torah portion, and we go through these. We'll take this power struggle into we'll see it in the plagues, which constitute the end of this Torah portion and the beginning of the next one. So, all right, well, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Shalom, shalom. Have a beautiful day.